authors, I just wanted to let you know we have an events handout upstairs at the front register talking about the rest of the events for August and some of our events that are happening in September. I just wanted to tell you about a couple of them. On Monday, we have Douglas Wienhoff, who's author of White Lama, which is the true story of the man who introduced Tibetan Buddhism and Hatha Yoga to the Western world. The author is going to be in conversation with popular yoga instructor Kelly Morris. That's Monday at 7 p.m. On Tuesday, we're launching an amazing new series with Time Out New York magazine called Ask Me About. It's all about reading a classic that you have always meant to read, and it's more than a book club. It's also part performance, part lecture. There's going to be alcohol. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the first book is Catch-22. So it's Tuesday night at 7 p.m. It is an event that you have to RSVP for, and it's possible that we are at our maximum. So if you're interested, you should definitely email tonight. The information is in the flyer upstairs. On Wednesday, August 24th, we have Vanessa Veselka, author of one of my favorite books of the summer, Zazen, which is a novel published by Richard Nash's new imprint, Red Lemonade, and it's an incredible book. So that's Wednesday, August 24th, and she's going to be in conversation with Richard Nash. And then on Thursday, August 25th, we have Patricia Marks, author of Starting From Happy. She's a staff writer for The New Yorker and a former writer for Saturday Night Live. And she's going to be in conversation with Meg Wolitzer. So lots of great stuff coming up. You can sign up for our email newsletter as well. And tonight only, Paradise Lust and A.J. Jacobs' latest book, My Life as an Experiment, are both 20% off, just so you know. You can get books signed immediately following this event. But tonight we're incredibly honored to have A.J. Jacobs interviewing Brook Wilensky-Lanford. A.J. Jacobs is the author of the New York Times bestsellers The Know-It-All and The Year of Living Biblically. He's the editor-at-large at Esquire magazine. And he said of Brook's book that Paradise Lust takes us on a fascinating journey and one that sheds much light on the meaning of biblical literalism. Brook is a graduate of Columbia University's MFA program in nonfiction, where she won the Arthur J. Harris Memorial Prize. And this is her first book, so let's all give a warm welcome.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm delighted to be here. I love this book. In fact, I think this book is a fascinating journey and one that sheds much light on the meaning of biblical literature. But it is a truly great book, and I'm delighted to be here. Brooke and I thought that I could quickly introduce my book so it would shed some light on why I'm here. And then Brooke can talk about her book. I'll ask Brooke a few questions, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A. So that's the broad plan. Anyway, my book came about because I grew up with no religion at all. As I say in the book, I'm Jewish, but I'm Jewish in the same way the Olive Garden is Italian. So not very. But I became very interested in religion. I had a son. I wanted to know what to teach him. So I decided to try to learn about religion by living it, by actually walking in the sandals of our forefathers. So I decided to follow every rule in the Bible as literally as possible. And as you might know, there are quite a few rules in the Bible. There's over 700. And I wanted to follow them all. So I wanted to follow the famous ones, which is, the Ten Commandments, and love your neighbor, be fruitful and multiply. And by the way, I did have twins during the year, so I do take my thank you. But I also wanted to follow the lesser-known rules, like that you should not shave the corners of your beard. And I didn't know where the corners were, so I just let the whole thing grow. And by the end, I had this huge topiary on my chin. And to give you an idea, I spent a lot of time at airport security. That was what I looked like. So I wanted to do that. There was rules. There are hundreds of rules that affect everything you do. The way you eat, the way you talk, the way you walk. That you can't wear clothes made of mixed fibers. That's in Leviticus, and this one seems so strange to me. Why would God care if I wore mixed fibers? It seemed like micromanaging. But I said, all right, that's what he says. So I got rid of all of my poly cotton shirts and pants and followed that rule. And weirdly, some of the more obscure and and baffling rules turned out to have meaning for me by the end. Not that one in particular. That one I still can't figure out, but many others. So it was an amazing year, and like Brook, I traveled the country to sort of embed myself and meet some of these people who take the Bible literally in their own way. So I spent a lot of time with the Amish and evangelical Christians and the Hasidic Jews. I think I may be the first person in America to out-Bible talk a Jehovah's Witness. He came over to my apartment, and after 3.5 hours, he's like, I gotta go. I can't take this anymore. But I was just fascinated because it is, to me, one of perhaps the most fascinating topic. And it was an amazing year. It changed my life in many ways. I came away with dozens of lessons and also a new perspective on literalism in the Bible. So it was very interesting to read Brook's book because she talks about many of the same ideas, many of the themes of biblical literalism. So with that, I'll introduce Brook and have her tell you about her great book.
Thank you, AJ. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you all for coming. Thank you for coming, Dad. You hear me? All right. And one of the reasons I was excited to be talking to AJ is it seems like the Year of Living Biblically and Paradise Lost are sort of like a funhouse mirror echo of each other, right? Like you collected all the instructional parts of the Bible in just this vast quantity and tried to live them all at once, sort of, or one at a time, and also at once. And I took this one verse or this one short passage of the Bible and tried to find as many different interpretations of that one chunk of text as possible, and try to reflect the many varieties of interpretation that way. And the literalism question is totally fascinating to me because I would have to say, after reading all this, I sort of came to the perspective that maybe there is no such thing as literalism, and that's something that I would love to chat with you about. But to broadly introduce my book for those of you who haven't heard about it ad nauseum for years on end, it's a history of people searching for the Garden of Eden on Earth, for the real Garden of Eden on the real Earth. And it was sparked actually by a family rumor that my dad told me a couple of years ago, that my great uncle, who I'd never met, had been looking for the Garden of Eden in the 1950s. And I thought this was very odd because all I knew about this great uncle was that he was a scientist. He was an allergy medical professional at the Columbia University Medical Center. He lived on the Upper East Side. And I could not, am I okay? Thank you. I thought this will seem like something that only a very religious person would really take seriously, and I didn't even know that he was a churchgoer or anything like that. And so I started wondering, where in the 1950s did someone think the Garden of Eden was? What made you think it was a real place? How could you get there? What would you find? It just started the wheels turning. And it turns out that my great uncle was by far not the only one who thought that you could find the Garden of Eden. And what was interesting to me was that, and the book, does go into Augustine and Calvin and sort of the medieval early people deciding that the Garden of Eden was a real place, but it really starts and really gets going in the late 19th century, after Darwin's theory of evolution has sort of become popularized and it's beginning to be accepted, and people are still grappling with this idea of making the Bible real. So it's people who are grappling with modern science as well as faith, and looking for creative ways, shall we say, to put the two together. So all of these seekers began with one passage of the Bible in Genesis, which I'm going to read to you now. Get ready. A river flows out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divides and becomes 4 branches. The name of the first is Pishon. It is the one that flows around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone are also there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one that flows around the whole land of Cush. The name of the third river is Tigris, which flows east of Assyria. and the fourth river is the Euphrates. So you have, in the middle of this, the creation story of Genesis, the very dramatic stories, you have 4 verses that are just a geographical description of 4 rivers. And it seems very matter of fact. It seems like, well, of course, this is a place, you could find. But what it turns out is, 2 of those rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, we've all heard of very, very frequently. We know where they go, but nobody really has pinpointed where the Pishon and Gihon are. There's many, many theories. So you find people who follow the Tigris and Euphrates and say, well, it must be in Iraq, it must be in Turkey, it must be in Armenia, it must be along the course somewhere of the real Tigris and Euphrates. But then you have the other folks, the other half, shall we say, who pay more attention to those Pishon and Gihon unknowns, who say, well, if we've never heard of these 2 rivers, maybe the Tigris and Euphrates aren't the same Tigris and Euphrates. Maybe they're named after another Tigris and Euphrates. Like Lebanon, New Hampshire, right? It's not Lebanon. In fact, it's not even pronounced Lebanon, right? It's like Lebanon, something else. Named after that. So they take this and they spin this in all these fascinating ways. Well, if the Pishon is the Thames, then where does that put the Garden of Eden? And so there's this back and forth between the more realistic seekers and the more fanciful seekers, and I tried to balance out those 2 things in any way that I could. So the Garden of Eden has been found not only in Iraq, but also in Mongolia and the Seychelles Islands, the North Pole, Ohio, Missouri, Sri Lanka, Damascus, Berlin, Santa Clara, California, and the Florida Panhandle, among others. That is not a complete list. There are some that I left out, believe it or not. So what I thought I'd do is to give you guys a little flavor of the variety of Gardens of Eden that I worked with. I wanted to read you the first sentence of a selection of chapters. And they all, as you'll see, begin in a very similar way. First one here. In the beginning, millions of years ago, the Lord God planted a garden northward in Eden. There was an abundance of sunlight, sequoias, and electricity, and all the biological conditions were most favorable. In the beginning, when the heavens had not been named, and likewise the firm ground below, the primordial waters of Tiamat mingled as a single body. So begins the Enuma Elish, the creation myth of the Babylonians, first written down in southern Mesopotamia nearly 3 millennia before the Bible. Does it sound familiar? In the beginning, the Lord God created man in Adams County, Ohio, just north of Peebles and south of Chillicothe. In the beginning, all that Babylonian stuff happened, the tree, the garden, the serpent, but it didn't happen the way the Babylonians told it. It took one genius Hebrew scribe to get it right. In the beginning, when the heavens were like the white of an egg and the earth was like the yolk, God created Adam, or, as the Chinese call him, Tian Wang. In the beginning, before they were selected by the Universal Father to usher in a utopian age on the planet Urantia, Adam and Eve were biologists. In the beginning, Adam didn't know what to do with himself in Eden. He just sat there all day, idle, naked, unemployed, under a Florida grapefruit tree. In the beginning, God created both man and nature, and he thought they would stay together forever. But man grew dissatisfied in paradise. Man wanted progress, and on the 7th day, while God rested, man took over. Man banished himself from the garden and has been trying to get farther away ever since. Ta-da.